Hey everybody, I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. Today I'm going to go through and start taking some cuttings of some various perennials. Reason being, I want to have some good established plants for when it's time to landscape our new house, that I'll have some of these things that I had here before to bring over to it. That'll save us a little bit of money as far as the landscaping goes, and plus I've got some favorite plants here that I just like and I want to keep with me. So what I'm starting with right over here is Salvia. This is one of my favorite plants. This is Salvia caradonna. You can tell it's starting to bud right now. It's probably a little too early for these plants to bud. I've got some cuttings of this that have already been established and well rooted, but you can never have too much salvia in the garden. Planting in mass is a great technique that you can use when you have a lot of them. So I'm going to take some more cuttings of this. So on the salvia, here's what I'm looking for. First off, before you start, clean off your snips or whatever you're using. Make sure that they're disinfected, because if you've got germs and stuff on there and bacteria, you don't want to spread it around. So I'm going to cut here on this one just above a node, so I have a couple of leaf buds that will come out and continue to grow. And then right here, I've got a 2-bud cutting. Now if I happen to have like a flower bud starting up here, I'll just come in and I'll pinch the flower bud off, because we don't want energy that we want going to the roots going to the flower bud. That'll make it a little harder. And so I'm going to pinch off these leaves here on the side, and I'm going to go through and just leave the top couple leaves right like that. Now it will root along the node here. That's the node. This is the internode. That's the area between the nodes. So it will root in the internodal area as well as around a node. So you can take a little bit longer cutting and stick this part here. You don't have to have a node here at the bottom. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to apply rooting hormone to it, and then I'm going to stick it. Okay, for this cutting I'm using a gel rooting hormone. I'll put something in the description here if you're interested in learning what it is. And I'm just going to take that, make sure it covers it in this nice little layer of purple goop, and then I'm going to just simply set it in this flat. So I'm going to stick it down gently into that spot, firm up around it just a little bit, so it will be nice and happy. Now, when you're doing that, you can take a pencil or some sort of a dibber and create a little hole if you want to, and then firm that up. That works too. Usually I don't find that that's even necessary for stuff like this. Notice there, the nodes are right here. It will root along the bottom portion there, and we'll just keep an eye on it. I have it in a flat. This flat has holes in it, the bottom flat does not, so that when I've got rooting forming, I'll be able to see it underneath here when it starts coming out of the holes, and I'll know that that's a good time for me to go ahead and transplant it into a different container. Now for a rooting medium, I'm using just some pine bark shavings, sometimes called soil conditioner. You can use sand, you can use this, you could use a combination of peat vermiculite. All those things will work just fine for salvia cuttings. Okay, so in the end we got about 7 cuttings out of just a couple minutes of work, and they should be beginning the process of rooting. I'm going to want to make sure that we keep this flat moist with plenty of water, good humidity, and keep it out of direct sun. So probably a shady location under some trees or on the north side of your house. One of those situations is going to work best. Next plant up for our cuttings is catmint, and we're basically going to do the exact same technique on catmint, and because it roots extremely well. It's extremely easy. You can take really small cuttings too of it. See this piece right here? I'm going to snip that again like that, and I can have 2 cuttings. I'm going to trim off the larger leaves right here, at least one of them. I may leave one right there, just like that. And that is an internodal cutting. Again, there's no node on the bottom, but it will root all the way along here. And then over here, you can do the same thing. I'm going to pinch these two leaves off, but I'm going to leave this cutting with two nodes as it's just fine that way. And I'm going to pinch off the top growth. Sometimes pinching off the top growth can help exert energy back down from those buds into the rest of the buds down here to help trigger either more leaves or rooting, which is what we're looking for. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing as I did with the salvia, just put a little bit of rooting hormone at the bottom and stick it in the same flat. Now, catmint is very easy to root, and so it does not always need rooting hormone. I'm only doing it to help speed things along a little bit and try to make it more of a sure thing. Typically, I'll get 4 out of 5 cuttings of catmint, or even higher percentages than that. It just depends on how many you do as to how high your percentage gets, because it gets pretty high rate. Catmint forms a really nice, bushy perennial that has flowers all over it that attract a lot of pollinators. It's also very deer resistant, rabbit resistant. Very few things tend to bother it, so it's very good to have in the garden. Now, this beautiful plant is a creeping style of phlox. It's just a small, low ground cover that blooms every spring, and it's also very easy to propagate. Let me show you. All you got to do is the same stuff as we did with the catmint and the salvia. I'm trying to zoom out a little bit so you can see better. But if you just take a cutting sort of like this, a couple of inches long, it will root all along that stem area. So when I put this in the rooting tray there, I'm going to bury it so that this whole thing is under the ground except for the green foliage up above. And then roots will form on these, and eventually I can separate them into smaller plants or just let it become one longer type of plant. So I'm going to take a few cuttings like this. Generally, you want to avoid plants that have flowers, so perhaps right now is not the ideal time, but we're going to do it anyway. It should still root. But after it's done blooming, you can come in and take what you need as far as cuttings go, and it will root very easy. The other thing about phlox is if you look underneath where it's been creeping, it's already formed a lot of roots. So like right here, there are some roots already there along the stem that we can use and just replant into a pot, and it's ready to go. So the primary way to propagate this is really through division, but you can do it through cuttings just as easily. So here's the cutting of the phlox I just took. I'm going to go ahead and do that just like I described to you, but I'm going to dip one end in some of the goopy stuff right here. There you can see it. And I'm going to set it down here. I'm just going to make a little trench for it and then bury it down and cover it up. So it'd be just like that. All right, just kind of loosely set in there. Some of these other cuttings, I'm going to do what I did with the other plants, but I'm going to just strip off some of the bottom leaves and I'm going to stick them upright. And you'll notice that they've got lots of nodes on them. So they've got lots of spots there where roots are going to be able to come from just fine. So I'll just take the rooting hormone, give it a dip, and then here it's going to be easier for me to actually stick it by making a little hole for it first. So I've got several cuttings of that I can do. And again, phlox is not necessarily something that's even going to need any kind of rooting hormone, but we're doing it to help speed things along and to increase success rates, because, you know, we like having successes when we root plants. We wouldn't be doing it otherwise. So that's a pretty good one to layer, but I'm going to pull some of that off and just kind of get that bottom dipped and set in here. Now, one nice thing about these trays is I don't have to water them overhead. I can lift up the tray, water the interior when I'm using that double tray method, and then they are watered from below. And it never hurts to spritz them, mist them a little bit when you have the garden hose out. Put it on a mist setting on your hose, and then give them a light mist. That prevents the water loss from the leaves through transpiration, and keeps that water and the moisture in the leaves and in the plant a little bit better, and increases your chances of success. Okay, a couple more plants that we're going to do is this. This is Monarda, also called bee balm. It's an herb as well as a flower. Lots of pollinators love it. It's very easy to grow. You can grow it from seed, you can grow it from a cutting, either way. And we just do the same technique. Stick it in like that. Doesn't matter if it's leaning over a little bit, not a problem at all. But these grow very simply. Just strip off the lower leaves. I am going to leave a few nodes here at the bottom. There's about 3 or 4 nodes. And then snip the spot that has the flower bud. Clear off a few leaves. Rooting hormone again is not necessary, but can be useful. And I'll put that just like this. Now, if you're gathering a bunch of cuttings, I recommend doing it early in the morning. They've rested all night. They've achieved their maximum amount of moisture, most likely, that they're going to have that day. Sometimes doing it a day after a rain is a good thing too. The next plant that we're going to do is lemon balm. And lemon balm will grow extremely easily from seed, so there's no reason you even need to do this a lot of the time, unless you just want to make more in a controlled manner and not have to worry about how seedy it gets. It can take over a garden, trust me. I know, we've got it about everywhere. But I want a couple of plants to take with us over to the new place. And so this is how I'm going to do it, rather than spread a bunch of seed that can make lots and lots of plants. I don't want tons of it, I just need a little. All right, and that didn't get in there very well. Let's try that again. And that's really all there is to it. You can see I've got quite a few plants in this little flat, and I've got lots of room left over here in the middle. So I may add some stuff to that later on, but for now, that's where I'm going to stop, and going to concentrate on getting these little plants growing and getting them rooted. They'll probably take about 2 weeks overall for each one of them to put on roots. So this will not take a very long time for them. But I will leave them outside in a shady area where they will be somewhat protected. I'm probably going to put like a daisy tray over top of it, upside down, to help protect it from animals and things like that. But I'm Dave with Growing Home Garden. If this was helpful to you, hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.